That's us recording as well. So that's you, okay?
Okay, thank you very much, Graham. Okay. Well, it's just after 10 o'clock, so welcome everybody. I'd just like to get the meeting underway. Right, well, good morning and welcome to the second pre-examination meeting in respect of the proposed Fetteresso wind farm located approximately 15 kilometres to the west of Stonehaven in Aberdeenshire. At our first meeting at the end of May, we agreed that we would meet a second time to review the arrangements for the inquiry commencing on the 1st of November, given the position of the pandemic at that time and the prospect of being able to hold the inquiry in person later in the year. And we also agreed to defer decisions on arrangements for site inspections to this meeting. Now, for those of you that didn't attend the first meeting, my name is Andrew Sykes, and I'm a reporter with the Scottish Government's Planning and Environmental Appeals Division, generally referred to as the DPEA. And I have been appointed by the Scottish Ministers to consider the application and report my findings and recommendations to them. Now, before I go any further, there are a few things I'd like to say about today's meeting. Firstly, I don't intend to rehearse or indeed review everything that we agreed at the first meeting, so please refer to the note of that meeting for the background to the case, the procedures that will be followed, and the dates for the submission of documents. Secondly, as you're probably aware, the meeting is being broadcast live to the DPEA website, and that a video record of the meeting will be retained on the website until the ministers have taken a decision on this matter. Now, by taking part in this virtual meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images and sound recordings and any information pertaining to them for webcasting and training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Now, the purpose of today's meeting is solely to discuss and confirm the administrative arrangements for the inquiry and site inspections. And as with the first meeting, there will be no discussion concerning the merits or otherwise of the application or of parties' cases. Now, you should have all received an agenda for today's meeting, which was issued on the 3rd of September. Now, before we go on, are there any questions on the matters that I've mentioned so far?
Yeah, hi Andrew, Justin Burgoyne here. I'm on a call because I'm in between work calls. Can we just confirm who is on the call and what their position is for my own notes?
Okay. It's perhaps easy if I just run through it. I've made a note.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
There's Colin Innes. Mr. Innes is an advocate. Apologies if I've got your title wrong. Representing the applicant, Fetteresso Wind Farm Limited. And there's a number of others who are with the applicant. I think that's Ms. Crystal. And is it Julie Aiken? Are you with the applicant or with the council?
With the applicant.
The applicant, that's right. Okay. There's also a Mr. Brown, who is an advocate and is representing the council. There's Arlene Gibbs, who I think is a solicitor with Aberdeenshire Council. There's James Hewitt, who is a planning officer with the council, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hewitt. Okay. We have Mr. Kleppen, who is the treasurer, I believe, of the Fewside Community Council. And there are a number of interested parties joining us today. There's Mr. Brian Cole. There's Mr. Rob Strachan. There's Mr. Bob Kilford, apologies. And there's a gentleman called Scott McCallum. Scott, I'm afraid I don't know who you're representing.
Good morning, sir. Scott McCallum. I'm a partner at Shipton Wedderburn Solicitors appealing for the applicant.
Okay, I beg apologies for that. Thank you. And that's it, Mr. Burgoyne.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, I mean, I will say that when I do a note of this meeting, I will list the attendees, and you should be able to see who they represent. So I will be sending that out. And
Okay, thanks.
you should have received a note of the first pre-examination meeting, and all the attendees were listed in an appendix to that note. And I think everybody who's here at the moment did appear at that meeting. Okay. In many ways, that's probably takes on nicely to the second item, which is an actual introduction to those representing the principal parties. So, Mr. Burgoyne, if you didn't quite capture everything I said, you'll hear from the people themselves, the principal parties, who will be taking part in the inquiry. So, if I could invite Mr. Innes, perhaps to introduce himself and his party, and then I'll move on to the council, then to the community council, and then I'll invite others to introduce themselves.
Yes, good morning, sir. My name is Colin Innes. I'm a partner in the law firm of Shepherd Wedderburn and appear on behalf of the applicants at this second pre-examination meeting. I'm also accompanied by my colleague Scott McCallum and also Julie Aitken and Finlay Bex-Phelps from the applicant company itself, and also the planning advisor Guillaume Christel from Locagen, who's also attending today with me. And those are the parties that are here today and ready to listen and, if necessary, contribute to today's proceedings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, sir. I'm Ewan Brown. I am an advocate appointed by the council in this matter, and I'm accompanied this morning by Arlene Gibbs, who, as you have identified, sir, is a solicitor with the council, and James Hewitt, who is a planning officer with the council.
Thank you. Mr. Clapham.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Russ Cleffin. I'm Treasurer for Fuchside Community Council, and of course we have an interest in the proposed development.
Okay, Mr. Cole, I see you're on the line. Yeah.
Hello all, my name is Brian Cole. I'm a local resident will be impacted by this development.
Okay, Mr. Cole, I'm not hearing you very well. I wonder if you could repeat that for me, please.
Yes, I'm a local resident who will be impacted by this development.
Thank you. Mr. Kilford?
Mr. Kilford, local resident. My property directly faces this proposed extension.
Thank you. Mr. Strachan, I don't think we've met you before. You were not able to attend the first meeting.
No, that's right. Thank you. Yes, my name is Rob Strachan, or Strawn, and I represent Clan Strachan, Clan Strawn, and I'm also a business owner in the area, and I'm also a local resident.
Thank you. Is there a preference to the pronunciation of your surname?
Well, I'll call myself Strawn is how I pronounce it, but I'm appealing to all Strachans and all Strawns throughout the world, so I will answer to either.
Okay. Well, I shall refer to you as Mr. Strawn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Burgoyne, perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, Justin Burgoyne. I didn't make the first meeting either. I'm a local resident that is within 3 kilometres and directly impacted by this proposed development. Thank you.
Very much. And just for everybody's information, you're probably aware that Scotways, the Scottish Rights of Way and Access Society, they've confirmed that it no longer intends to participate in the inquiry process. You'll recall that Scotways had intended to lodge a further written submission on the effects of the proposed development on public rights of way. It is, however, content to rest upon its original submission to the application. However, its objection to the application remains. Okay, item 3 is some discussion on the documents. Before we discuss arrangements for the inquiry itself, I'd like to check on the progress on the submission of documents, given the changes to the timetable since our first meeting, and that the Community Council and others are aware of the submission of documents and have had the opportunity to read them. So to date, and I'll go through this list slowly, I have received a first draft of the core document list. I've also received a statement of agreed matters on planning and renewable energy policy between the council and the applicant. I've also received a statement on agreed matters on landscape and visual impact between the council and the applicant. And I've received inquiry statements from the applicant, the council, and Mr. Coll, and hearing statements from the applicant and the council, including a draft conditions statement. Now, as of last Friday, I await submission of a statement of agreed matters between the applicant and the Community Council. And I've yet to receive inquiry statements from the Community Council and Mr. Kilford and Mr. Strachan. Although I have, Mr. Strawn, although I have received a number of documents from you, including a document entitled Wind Turbines, Local and International Opposition, dated June 2021. And I'm not clear whether this document is intended to be your inquiry statement or a document to which you might refer to when you present your evidence to the inquiry. So firstly, I was wondering if you could clarify that matter for me before I move on to others.
I think that will be my inquiry statement.
Your inquiry statement. Okay, now I know there was the intention of producing a statement of agreed matters between the applicant and the Community Council. So perhaps, Mr. Innes, I could ask you first where we are with that.
Thank you, sir. It's my understanding that there have been ongoing discussions, but that an agreed statement is yet to be agreed. There have been fairly extensive discussions, but we're just not at a stage yet where we're able to reach agreement on issues, and I think that reflects some of the wide diversity of views within the relevant Community Council. But we have been attempting, and those conversations have been conducted, as far as we're concerned, in good faith between both parties. We've both been trying.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Clapham?
Yes, I would just quickly like to add, and Julie Aitken may like to say something as well. I believe we've had 6 drafts of the statement of agreed matters, and I think the final draft that I sent back to Julie this weekend, I'm hoping and I'm confident that now is the final draft. So Julie may want to say a little bit more, but I'm pretty close. I'm pretty confident we're there now.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should have something over later on today, hopefully.
Right, thank you.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. And staying with you, Mr. Clapham, the preparation of an inquiry statement, I fully appreciate that you'd wanted to get the statement agreed before you turn to your attention to an inquiry statement. But when might you be able to lodge that?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. So you want us? You're expecting us to get something in addition to the statement of agreed matters? Well, I could get that done this week.
That's good to hear. I mean, really, what we're looking for is, a structure to the evidence that you intend to present to the inquiry, who you might rely on to present evidence, if indeed you do have others helping you present that evidence. It's just.
Sorry, I'm butting in, but I don't believe we don't want to present any more evidence than is already in the statement of agreed matters.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kilford, am I to expect something from you regarding the presentation of evidence?
Yes, I did submit a document last week, which has been sent out to some parties, which sets out the points that I wish to raise. that document could stand in itself, or if you think I need to provide more documentation to support it, then quite happy to do so. I'm surprised you haven't seen it, although it was submitted late last week.
Okay, well, apologies for not being able to, having not seen it, but I'll certainly take a look after this meeting. But it's entirely up to you whether you want to rest on that submission or whether you'd want to speak to that evidence at the inquiry. So
okay, my intention in submitting it was that I'd rest on that statement because I think it speaks for itself.
Okay, Mr. Strong, reach out to you. Mr. Burgoyne, what would be your intention? Am I right in thinking that from what you said, you haven't seen a note of the first meeting, which actually sets out the arrangements for the inquiry?
I don't recollect it, but I've been very busy at work and so forth since May time, so it may be deep in my emails. I just haven't got to it. But I do have a question. I seem to recollect that I submitted information along with a number of my other residents back into the portal, planning portal, back in, I think it was July, August 2019. Where is that material? A number of my residents, a local farmer and others, don't have access like we do in this day and age to Skype, WebEx, Teams, whatever you want. And they all wrote down notes and various family members put them on. Have they been considered? Have they been lost? Do we need to? And I submitted a 2-page document with 7 objections as well as some additional information following the survey. I've kept a copy of it, so it's easy for me to resubmit. But what happened to the previous submissions?
All the submissions that have been made to the application are before me. I have those. The inquiry process that we've now embarked upon is where the evidence of the applicant and the council is being tested in an open forum, and you're welcome to join that debate. But I do have the material that's been submitted right throughout this process, and I will address all of that material when I come to write my report and make recommendations. So it's certainly not been lost, and there's certainly no need to resubmit that information.
Okay, so you have my 2-page.
Yeah. So
and that of my neighbours, Mr. Morley, Mr. Whitaker, and others who don't use IT a lot.
Now I've got all of that, and what I do have is the council's reports to their various councils, which sets out the representations that were made to the application. So I have that. I'm aware of who has made representations and what their concerns are. So I have all that before me, and as I say, I will address those matters when I come to write my report. The purpose of today and the previous meeting was to set the arrangements for people's participation in the inquiry itself, the evidence you intend to lead, the documents you intend to rely upon. So if it is your intention to take part in the inquiry, then the requirement is that you submit an inquiry statement, which basically says, these are my arguments, these are the documents I'm going to rely upon, because there should be no surprises come the inquiry, in spirit of fairness and openness to other parties. So that's really what this inquiry statement is about. It's setting out the structure of your argument and the evidence that you intend to lead. So you might want to perhaps just think about this, but is it your intention to participate in the inquiry process or rest on the submissions that you've made to date?
No, I'd like to participate.
Okay. And do you think you'll be able to submit? I beg your pardon.
And therefore, yeah, I'll need to formalise my 2-pager into quote unquote an inquiry statement then.
What I'll do after this meeting, I'll ask my office to send you a copy of the note of the first examination meeting, which took place at the end of May, and that sets out in quite some detail what the requirements are.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so if I've understood you correctly, Mr. Clapham, and you would hope to have something to me by the end of this week in terms of the inquiry statement. So, Mr. Clapham?
Sorry, muted. I'm just going to pass that question to Julie Aitken. I returned it to her yesterday. I'm fairly sure that that's the final document, but I'm expecting Julie to lodge it.
No, sorry, I was thinking about your inquiry statement rather than the statement of agreed
Okay,
matters.
my inquiry statement, which won't be more than a couple of lines, to say that we won't be submitting any more evidence other than what's in the SOAM.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. Right, I just want to say just briefly about our core document library. As referred to in the note of the first meeting, the DPEA has compiled a documents library that contains a range of documents that are commonly referred to as core documents in the course of renewable energy cases. That library is now live, and it's intended that applicants, councils, and other parties participating in a renewable energy case such as this will be able to use the library to access the documents that they may wish to present as evidence to the inquiry. And my note of the meeting will include a link to that library. And just a note for the applicant here, my office will be in touch following today's meeting to provide a list of the documents held in the library. And you'll also be provided with a list of the application documents held by us as part of the case file, with the corresponding URLs that link to where the documents are published on our website. So when compiling the list of core documents for the inquiry, you can simply provide the URLs to any documents held in the library or the case file that you wish to submit as core documents. There's certainly no requirement for the applicant to provide a separate copy of these documents to ourselves. Right, item 4, this is the participation of those interested parties at the in further procedure. On page 5 of the note of our first pre-examination meeting, I set out a table of the topics to be considered at the inquiry, the procedure to be followed, and expected participants. And I'd like to check with the Community Council, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kilford, Mr. Strawn, and Mr. Burgoyne, whether it remains the intention to participate in the inquiry session on landscape and visual impacts separately, or whether there's any prospect of you joining together to present evidence. And again, perhaps I can start with you, Mr. Clapham, whether there's any prospect of people joining together to present evidence.
I think that'll be slightly difficult, in as much as I think there is quite a number of differences between us, and I if you like, I understand that some of the local residents have got some particular things they wish to emphasise, which I'm probably not capable of doing.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. Mr. Cole, you said you might simply just rest upon your statement, or you want to participate in the inquiry session?
Yeah, I think that the statements that I've submitted pretty much cover all of the points that I want to raise with the process. I still would like to be part of the process, but I don't see what else I can add to what I've already stated.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kilford.
Yeah, similar to Mr. Cole, I think the written statement, subject to you seeing it and providing any feedback that's necessary, will be sufficient, although I would wish to remain involved in the process.
Thank you. Okay, I've heard from you, Mr. Strawn, so I understand your intentions. And Mr. Burgoyne, I think we've discussed that with you previously as well, so you'd wish to be involved in the inquiry.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Innes, I wonder if you've got any comments on what you've heard from the third parties.
I have no substantive comment. I think the only thing is to make sure that that fair notice is given in the statements as to what your evidence is. That's the key point to this whole process, is that I've got a witness that needs to prepare for these sessions, and they need to understand what other parties' positions are, and that's really how this whole process proceeds. So fair notice of what your issues are, and then they can be looked at, examined, and then the individual witness can be available for questioning on those matters. That's really the only matter that I think always is an important consideration. But apart from that, absolutely no further comment. It is part of the process to ensure that everyone who wants to participate can do so, and it looks like quite a number want to be involved in this process, and the applicant is delighted with that.
Okay, thank you. I'll certainly make that point clear in my note of the meeting, Mr. Innes. Okay. Mr. Brown, any comments of what you've heard?
No, sir, other than to just echo Mr. Innes's point about fair notice being given.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, turning to the inquiry arrangements themselves, the expectation at the time of the first pre-examination meeting was that the inquiry would proceed as a virtual event. The most recent DPEA coronavirus guidance was issued on the 6th of August, and that states that events already planned around virtual procedure will in most cases continue to be held virtually. Now, if you're viewing the agenda electronically, there's a link to the guidance note in note 5 on that note. And on this basis, I expect to conduct the inquiry as a virtual event. Now, I would add the intention is to webcast the inquiry to ensure that proceedings can be viewed remotely. No party who wishes to give evidence will be precluded from doing so. So I'd like to hear the views on the parties on this matter. And again, if I could start with you, Mr. Innes.
Colin, on behalf of the applicant, just to say that we agree with your proposals. I think there are now continue to be significant challenges in getting groups of people together, notwithstanding relaxation of provisions. We all have our own procedures that we need to invoke, and in the circumstances, we think, given the timing, that virtual proceedings are both appropriate and will work effectively.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, sir, the council is resigned to the fact that the inquiry will have to be held virtually. The council has made arrangements for its team to be in one location, which should hopefully mean it's easier to present the council's case. But apart from that, sir, I've got no further comment on the form of inquiry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clapham.
Yes, I've got no problem with it being virtually, Mr. Sykes, and I'll attend.
Okay. Does a virtual inquiry present you with any difficulties, Mr. Cole?
It's actually more beneficial to me. I work overseas, so the only forum that I can really commit to would be a virtual forum.
Okay. And the same question to you, Mr. Kilford.
Yeah, virtual meetings are fine for me.
Okay. Mr. Struan?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with all of you. I think it would be, in order for me to make the case on behalf of the clan, I think a site visit would be enormously helpful. I couldn't make the last meeting because of problems with internet connectivity here, and I feel that it's being in amongst the landscape here and seeing the landscape and seeing what we're talking about. That's really the crucial issue for me and the clan, so that's really would be my position on that.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, I will come on to talk about site inspections in a moment, but this process does involve a site inspection, and I'm more than happy to undertake a site inspection. I've already visited the area, and I visited a number of the viewpoints that have been identified in the landscape and visual assessment. But I'm more than happy to come up again and have a look on an accompanied basis, if that's going to be permissible. So don't conflate the two things. We can have a virtual inquiry whilst where the evidence is presented and tested. Things may arise from those discussions that require me and others to actually go on site and see what's being referred to. So we can hold a virtual inquiry, and separately we can undertake site inspections. And you'll be invited to identify things that you specifically would like, physical features that you would like me to see. So you know, there is that certainly that possibility, and it's built into the process.
Okay.
Okay. So on that basis, are you content for the evidence to be presented and tested on a virtual basis, and we deal with the site inspection separately?
A virtual basis only, or a virtual basis as well as seeing evidence here on the ground, and that's also admissible?
Oh no, the purpose of the site inspection is solely for you to draw my attention to certain things that you would like me to see. We're not conducting the inquiry itself when we're on site. So the virtual proceedings will hear the evidence. And if something's been referred to that you would like me to see, you can point that out to me. You can accompany me on site, say, you know, if that's permissible at the time, and you can draw my attention to something, but you can't use that event to present evidence.
If it helps, I agree with Rob. Something as important as this that affects us as residents, I think the inquiry should be face-to-face. There are other residents, as I've mentioned, that do not have access to IT or the technology to be able to call in either. So I think we need to move on from COVID. We're back at work. The country needs to get going. This needs to be face-to-face, from my perspective.
Well, Mr. Burgoyne, there are consequences of moving to an in-person inquiry. For example, the kind of scheduling of this inquiry. We don't want to introduce a delay into the process. And to be honest with you, if it doesn't commence on the 1st of November, there's very real prospect that it might be some time before we can convene in person. And certainly the guidance that the DPEA has issued at the moment would suggest that we should continue to hold inquiries on a virtual basis. So
I hear that, but you asked the question. You asked my opinion, and
yes.
both Rob and I think it should be face to face. This is an important aspect for the community, and you know, it needs to be held and performed accordingly.
I think, Mr. Struan, that there is you know, a site inspection is part of the process, and I'm more than happy to be accompanied on a site inspection to see the things that are being referred to and presented in evidence. So I can give you that reassurance.
I mean, I think the effects on the landscape are not virtual. This is something very real, which should be seen, you know, from that perspective, not from a virtual perspective. This is not a virtual perspective issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Innes, is there anything you would like to say what you've heard?
Yes, thank you, sir. I mean, the fundamental point is that even if we're in an inquiry session, we're dealing with material that we lodge and submit, and thereafter challenge in the context of the inquiry process. So the actual physical event is one where we deal with things using material that has been lodged, fully recognizing that any of the landscape and visual material ultimately is to be used in the field to form judgments. And that's why the environmental assessment is undertaken by carrying out site inspections and forming judgments and opinions. And equally, that's a matter that other parties have also taken the opportunity to go and experience and then comment on. And therefore, this separation between discussing essentially the evidence in an inquiry or hearing session, and then separately having material pointed out in a site inspection is how all proceedings are undertaken. We don't have a process whereby we discuss evidence in the field. And the difficulty is that without having a process, things get out of hand and it's very difficult to manage. And therefore, that's why we have a process where there's multiple participation. And that requires some basic ground rules, as the inquiry is where we discuss the evidence, and the site inspections are opportunities for parties to point out the matters they want to point out to. For example, somebody may want to point out and say, this is how my property orientates, and this is the view that I will have. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to point out at a site inspection, but it's the physical parameters that you're pointing out. We're not having a debate about whether that's acceptable, unacceptable, significant or not significant. It's being pointed out from the particular location, because that's the judgment ultimately that has to be performed by you, sir, in ultimately writing your report. So effectively, this process is one which we have our debate, but ultimately it's to assist you in finalising your evidence, and that usually is based both on evidence in the public inquiry or hearing session and the physical inspections that you undertake yourself, and also matters which any party wants to point out in the context of a site inspection. And therefore, my concern in relation to trying to hold a physical event is knowing how difficult any events are to hold in the current climate, and the logistics and everything else associated with that, is that it does create significant challenges. And despite relaxations, the levels of infection are still exceptionally high in Scotland, and that increases the risks of trying to hold events in person and making them work. And that's the fundamental point. We need this process to work, because we've been in the process some time, and everyone wants to bring this matter to a conclusion, which I think is another key part of this process, is trying to do that. And we have already within this process, I think, allowed additional time in the run-up to the public inquiry, which I think has been used really usefully in terms of parties seeking to agree matters, so that when we actually get to the process, that the issues are far narrower than they would otherwise be. And certainly over the period, that time has been used constructively, and certainly the council and the applicant have sought, as far as possible, to narrow those issues, to make sure that at any session the issues are as narrow as possible. And we've worked very hard to do that, and that's all again part of the process. We may be on opposite sides, but we are trying to narrow things at that process. So, as I say, we've taken a bit more time than perhaps the standard, because we'd have probably been kicked off and gone for an inquiry if it had been under the previous proposals. But I think we recognise that in this virtual world, there is an advantage in perhaps not going as quickly. And equally, we were coming up to a time period when it was summer holidays and many people hadn't had any forms of break for 18 months. So I think we recognise that we perhaps needed an extended run-in. And I think if we extend that probably would not be appropriate. And that's my concern in relation to trying to hold a physical event at the beginning of November.
Thank you for that. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, sir. Well, I think it's perhaps worth saying, sir, that as you may recall, that the first the council was keen that the inquiry be held in person, and indeed it was willing to reserve the council chambers in Stonehaven for that purpose. However, it's accepted that we're not in as good a position as we might have hoped at that time, as far as the pandemic is concerned, and there are logistical difficulties in trying to set up in-person events. And I think, sir, the other thing which is in the council's mind here is that we're looking at an inquiry which is scheduled for 4 days. If there was to be an outbreak of COVID, if someone was to find himself in that position, then of course that would then impact upon the inquiry, because it might have to be adjourned for that. So it seems safer that the inquiry is held as a virtual event, and that's why Sarah said that the council was resigned to the fact that it had to be a virtual event. In an ideal world, it would have undoubtedly have preferred an in-person event. So far as site inspections are concerned, I could perhaps offer some reassurance that the council does have viewpoints, and in particular views from roads, which it wishes you to consider, sir, and it would very much want to take part in those in person in the field in order that points can be drawn to your attention, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Struan, do you foresee difficulties in participating using your, I don't know what the broadband connectivity is like in your locality? Are there other arrangements that you could make to participate virtually?
Well, I would try to make sure that I can attend, but I do think this isn't a virtual issue. I mean, this is a very real issue. It's a very real landscape. I mean, tourists and people that come to Scotland, I mean, if they could just look at Scotland on a video screen as a virtual visit, they wouldn't even bother to come. I mean, you surely have to take the aspects of the very real effect on the landscape seriously enough to actually give the time to make an inquiry that enables people and to explain what the issues are, and that is my difficulty on this virtual way of communicating. That I cannot communicate effectively what it means to all the members of Clan Strawn and Clan Strachan in a virtual way.
Well, hopefully I've tried to reassure you that there will be site inspections, and I'm fairly flexible. I mean, I have visited a number of the viewpoints on an unaccompanied basis, but I'm more than happy to be accompanied, as I say, if the conditions allow, and for you to draw to my attention matters that you think are.
Okay, well, I mean, if I'm allowed and enabled to be able to speak and say, you know, to be able to explain whilst looking at the landscape what it is that Clan, all the Clan feel is important, you know, then that's what I'm after. If I can't do that, if it's everything to be done by video screen, then you know, it's becomes very well, very difficult.
Well, I hear what you say, and but you must bear in mind that the site inspection isn't a forum to present and lead evidence. Okay, I'll try and set out in my notes of this meeting.
Seen as around that, you know, the landscape is not. It's not in little boxes. I mean, the landscape is the landscape for the area.
Okay, well, I'll try and draw all this together in my note of this meeting and set out what my intentions are in terms of the inquiry arrangements. Right. Well, we've kind of moved on to the second item. Sorry, the next item, which is about site inspections themselves. And as I've mentioned, I have visited a number of the viewpoints in the locality. Unfortunately, despite good weather forecasts, when I got to the top of viewpoints 5 and viewpoints 10, that's Clacton and Doris Hill, I'm afraid the mist came down and I wasn't able to see the turbines of Mid Hill. Now, I'm more than happy to go back and view those again when the weather forecast might be better. And again, whether I do that on an unaccompanied basis or accompanied basis, I'm more than happy to do that. What I haven't done, I haven't visited any of the property viewpoints. So again, happy to do that. And normally what happens, Mr. Struan and others, is that we would ask the applicant to draw up an itinerary for a day's site inspections. And you'd have an opportunity to kind of feed into that process and identify the points that you would like me to visit and particular things you would like me to see. So perhaps I could ask Mr. Innes about arrangements for site inspections. Now, this could take place either before or after the inquiry itself? So it's Mr. Innes.
Thank you, sir. Again, looking at the EIA and the various visual material, a lot of the sites are ones that are public sites that are accessible and can be visited. I mean, the applicant's largely satisfied that you will be able to gain satisfactory evidence from going to those matters potentially unaccompanied. What we would say is that in terms of the site inspection, we would encourage a visit to the application site itself, and we think there might be some benefit in doing that prior to the inquiry, really to just set the scene for the context for the development and the discussion in the public inquiry session on landscape and visual. It's actually relatively straightforward. I know the council have had a whole team have had a site inspection up to the application site as well. In terms of vehicle, to get right up into the application site is relatively straightforward, but it is over a forestry track. But it's not particularly rough as forestry tracks go. But it may well be that if you had a standard car, you probably not want to take it over, and you might want to rent something that's got some height, but it's not particularly challenging in terms of a route. But what that does enable you to do is it enables quite an efficient examination of the application site, because you can get right up to the substation and the existing control buildings, and from there it's relatively straightforward in terms of being able to access and see necessary matters. And I think in the context of considering the site and its surrounds, that's something which certainly, having been at home myself, benefited from doing that. And it was it's probably a morning or an afternoon, but it enabled a good context for understanding how the site sits within the landscape. As regards other matters, we've been more than happy to liaise with other parties about setting up further site inspections. The purpose of accompanied site inspections are where particular matters the party wants to point out various matters that at a particular location, and we're more than happy to try and liaise with other parties to try and put together a sensible itinerary of matters that should be pointed out. In terms of one of the challenges that we've had in the past of doing site inspections under the current climate is that number of vehicles has been a bit of an issue with going to some areas and locations. But we just need to make sure that that's sort of thought about in advance, and that perhaps there isn't a need for everyone to attend all aspects of the site inspection. If you live in a particular location, you want somebody to come and look at the particular property and the aspects, and that's your main point. You don't need to come on the whole site inspection, but equally, if we produce an itinerary, we can potentially, hopefully, give an indication of the rough timings as to when the site inspection would arrive to look at those particular aspects. Similarly, in terms of the site inspection, usually there has to be a representative of the applicant and also of the council present to ensure that it's being conducted appropriately, and that's fairly standard. So the applicant and the council are usually represented at all locations, but in terms of other locations, it's really up to those other parties as the extent to which they wish to be involved, and also where they wish you to go and to point things out. So it is a very open and inclusive process, and we're more than happy to work with other parties to try and facilitate that as effectively as possible.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Innes. Mr. Brown, any thoughts?
Thank you, sir. Well, so far as the application site is concerned, sir, the council would commend a site visit. As Mr. Innes indicated, the council's team did visit site. Arrangements were made for that, for which we're grateful, and we can endorse the value of seeing the site. And I would echo Mr. Innes's comments that it's not a challenging route. Indeed, I drove it myself, following the lead of the attendant, the accompaniers. In terms of the viewpoints, sir, there's obviously an issue between the council and the applicant about the magnitude of change at viewpoint 5, and the council would be anxious so that, although it recognises that ultimately it's a matter for you, sir, but the council would be anxious that that at least was seen by you before the inquiry commenced, given that there will be evidence on that during the inquiry. The council's landscape and visual impact witness will also speak to the effects on some of the minor roads, and the council would be keen, sir, that you had an opportunity to see those, but perhaps that's a point of detail which can be taken up with Mr. Innes if he is to coordinate viewpoints and so on. And it may be, sir, that that's better carried out after the inquiry or at the close of the inquiry once the evidence on that has been given.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clapham, on behalf of the Community Council, your thoughts on site inspections?
On behalf of the Community Council, I think we have got a couple of points. We're clearly very keen for you to visit the main viewpoints that are already mentioned in the EIA, and I think from the top of my head that they're mostly the view from Clacton Ben, the view from the Mullock Hill, and the view from Cairn Mount. One of the issues that we're particularly concerned about is light pollution. And I know this is difficult, but is it possible for you to to go to some of those viewpoints at night? Because clearly that's when light pollution is the most important aspect. So I don't know how difficult that would be, but perhaps you have to imagine it during a daytime visit. But I think from our point of view, it would be very good if that was possible. You could get a nighttime view of the area as well to understand just how little light pollution there is in the area, and the effects that the potential lighting on these turbines would have. That's my first point. My second point really is with regarding to noise. I hope you can visit some, and actually it's not so much true over on our side of the valley, on the Fuchside side of the valley, but over on the other side, on the Mearns Council side of the valley. I hope you can view the properties which are going to be very, very close to the new proposed turbines, and get some understanding of just how the noise would affect them, because I do appreciate that that's one of their very big concerns. Those are the 2 points, I think, from my point of view.
Okay. Well, dealing with your first point, I have in the past visited sites in the evening, so I could do that on an unaccompanied basis. So I'm more than happy to to do that. Were you thinking prior or after the inquiry?
I don't think it matters to me too much, as long as it's taken prior to the decision.
Okay, right. Okay, and on the second matter, I mean, I did indicate at the first pre-inquiry examination meeting that I felt I had sufficient information on noise. So I wasn't intending to make particular arrangements to go and examine that matter, by visiting other kind of wind farms. I think the material before me addresses the issue of noise, and I've got all the responses from those that are interested in that matter before me. So and I did indicate that I felt I had sufficient information on that. So, I mean, I will certainly address the matter in my report, but I wasn't intending to take it any further than that.
Okay, as long as you have sufficient, as long as you feel you have sufficient information, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Mr. Cole and Mr. Kilford, have you any comments on site inspections? I mean, Mr. Innes spoke about perhaps being present at the particular points that you have an interest in your properties. Is that something that you would find helpful?
It's Mr. Kilford. Yes, indeed. There are several of us that live quite close together, so I think it would be well worthwhile having a site meeting where we could bring several of us together so you could understand our viewpoint and the impact this would have. My own personal view is as well that this would be best done before the inquiry because it would help you understand the context of some of the points that we're trying to raise, you know, to be followed up during the inquiry.
Thank you. And Mr. Cole?
I mirror the comments of both Mr. Kilford and Mr. Clapham. I think it's imperative that proper site visits are made to the residences that are most affected by this one, rather than just some predetermined viewpoints that were part of the application. So I don't think those viewpoints will give a full measure of what it's like to actually be living in that area once this extension, or if this extension goes ahead. I know you mentioned there about noise levels and that you had the information that you know, from previous applications and, you know, regarding wind farm noise. However, what has to be remembered is not only the noise of the wind farm itself, but the noise compared with what it was before these wind farms appeared, and what it is currently, and what it will be when we get 10 additional turbines closer to us at the biggest heights of land turbines in the country. It's going to be a huge effect.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Burgoyne, and then I'll come to Mr. Struan. Mr. Burgoyne.
Yeah, hi. I agree with the previous three. I think it's very important that you visit. There's actually 11 properties that the survey has identified as being major or significantly impacted visually or otherwise. It also gives, and excuse me, an opportunity for you to visit the locality on our side and look at the road network and so forth, because I have also concerns around access to the proposal, given the fact that we were an unofficial access route to phases 1 and 2. So you yourself come and look at where we live, what we see. It's very important to understand that Midhill phase 1, 2 and 3, let's call it Midhill phase 3, because in essence it's going into the same connections. There's currently there's the forest obscures a lot of it. Now, even when that wood is felled, then that is going to change the dynamics of how the current and proposed development will impact us. So I would personally like you to visit my property, my neighbour's property. Also gives you a chance to visit those, as I keep harping on about, that through IT cannot access these sorts of discussions and listen to their viewpoints. It's not all about visibility. It's not all about noise and about flicker. There's also some genuine concerns about the construction, the material, the impact to private water supplies, etc., etc. So I really think a visit to those 11 properties that are impacted is very important, to listen to those residents. They all have different concerns that are unique to each of us.
Well,
and I think it should be definitely before.
So I'm more than happy to visit properties. Okay. And finally, Mr. Struan, we've talked about visiting certain viewpoints, but from what you've said beforehand, there's obviously a kind of sequential series of views that you might find, you might think that I probably should see. Is there a particular route that you would like me to travel along?
Yes, there are. Yes, really. Coming over from Stonehaven at the Slug Road, coming over down into on that small road which takes you down past Knockburn Lock, you know, coming in up the Bankery, the road from Bankery to Strawn, going over the hill from Strawn and Fingen over to Aboyne, and coming back again. I mean, essentially, I mean, the Glendye wind farm was all the community councils objected, Aberdeenshire Council objected. The issues are exactly the same here as the Glendive wind farm. The visual effect for tourism in this area, and I mean, the Scottish Government has to consider that. You know, I mean, if you give a wind farm has 25 turbines, surely that doesn't mean 35 or 45 turbines. It means it has planning permission for 25 only.
I'm trying to focus on arrangements for a site inspection, and you've heard from the applicant that they're happy to try and put together an itinerary of things that all the parties would be interested or would like me to see. So can I ask you to focus on that particular point, please? I mean, I suppose I'm getting the impression from all the contributions so far that an inspection before the inquiry would be beneficial to the inquiry itself. And I suppose it's on that basis, what is it that you would like me to see? What sequential route, what viewpoint would you like me to see in advance of the inquiry? So you don't have to say that now. I mean, the applicant has offered to prepare an itinerary for that, and you'll have the opportunity to feed into the preparation of that itinerary. So on that basis, are you content with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're almost there. I mean, what I will say is that I will certainly send out to Mr. Burgoyne a copy of the notice that I prepared after, the note I prepared after the first meeting. But any queries that you do have about the application so far, please continue to go through Norag Smith, who's the case officer at my office, and I'll include her details on the note of the meeting. And I'll try and get that note out by the end of this week, so we can make some progress on that. So I think all that's left for me to do is perhaps just go around the meeting and see if there's any other business that parties wish to raise with me at this moment in time. So Mr. Innes, is there anything you'd like to add before we close?
So it might be worth just giving some thought to the programming and make sure that we're sort of all thinking that we've got it about right in terms of the timings and how the week might work.
Good point.
In terms of the applicant, if we open with landscape and visual, the applicant will have a single witness, Brian Denny, and in normal inquiry process, the applicant would go first, and they will give their evidence first thing on the Monday morning, and thereafter be subject to cross-examination by counsel and other parties. As I say, there's been quite a lot of narrowing of issues between the council and the applicant. I'm hopeful that I would have thought that Mr. Denny could be completed within day one of the inquiry. That would then leave the next witness would be the council's witness, and I'm just going to the council in the inquiry statement of case appears to potentially have two witnesses, Mr. Steele, landscape and visual, and also there also appears to potentially Mr. Hewitt. I think I don't know if it's intended that he would be giving evidence at that session, or whether that would be deferred to the hearing session on policy, or whether, given the overlap of matters, Mr. Hewitt will be lodging a practitioner. But in terms of Mr. Steele, who will undoubtedly be giving evidence in relation to that particular session, he clearly only gets cross-examined by one party, and that should probably truncate the length of his appearance. And it'd be hopeful that he could perhaps potentially be complete by early afternoon, which would then, on the Tuesday, which would then afford other parties the opportunity to give evidence on probably later on Tuesday. In terms of the matters in relation to policy and conditions, my overall impression looking at the statements that have been submitted is again that the matters between the parties are now relatively narrow, both in respect of policy and in respect of the conditions. And I suspect that given that position, it might well be that that particular aspect of this process might be completed in an afternoon rather than both having to take one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And that might give us a bit of overlap on the Wednesday morning, that if the landscape and visual session overran into Wednesday morning, would still potentially, I think, likely to potentially be able to complete on the evidence on the Wednesday, provided all goes well and we don't have technology issues or whatever. But we do, of course, all have Thursday booked in for an overrun should that occur. But those were sort of potential thoughts about timings, and I suppose if again, it's sometimes almost easier if third parties are given a specific time if they want to appear. If we were committing to a time scale and people wanted a definitive time, I'd have thought the Wednesday morning would be the sensible slot to say that we can guarantee you a time then to speak, and you can either sit through the previous 2 days, or you can come on the Wednesday morning and give evidence then. That offers that flexibility to parties, or otherwise you just wait your turn to give evidence. But I just flag that as some people with commitments might find it easier to say, look, I'd rather commit to being available on Wednesday morning, and that's the time I know I'm going to be giving my evidence, and I can commit to it. So those were just some general thoughts, and I don't know, the council may have some ideas and comments, and in particular the number of witnesses they're leading at the landscape and visual session. But I thought it was helpful to try and see if we could perhaps set out some opportunities for third parties to fix time if that was to particularly relevant to them.
That's very helpful, and apologies for not thinking about that beforehand. And if we were to visit the application site before the inquiry, are we looking at the preceding week? So, sorry here. So perhaps sometime the week beginning the 25th of October?
Yeah, I think that work. Although the only thing is, sometimes if you've got commitments, I sometimes think 2 weeks might be. But let's just see how we go. We'll need some time to organise it. But it looks like it might be a day and a bit. But I think that would be sensible.
I just had this 2 weeks holiday. I would avoid the last 2 weeks of October, because you might find some of us are not available, and also the weather. So I would suggest the earlier you can get here, the better. But I would avoid the last 2 weeks of October due to school holidays.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Brown, your thoughts on timings?
Yeah, thank you, sir. So far as the council's witnesses are concerned, I should perhaps just deal with that first. Mr. Hewitt's name appears in the list of witnesses just as a councillor perfection. He's covering the hearing on policy and planning matters. It's not intended that he would give evidence on landscape and visual matters. That being the case, it would be hoped, sir, that Mr. Denny would be finished with his evidence on the Monday, and there may even be a possibility, depending on when we finish with Mr. Denny and depending on how long you wish to sit that day, sir, given that it is more difficult with virtual inquiries to sit for prolonged periods, but it may be possible to do Mr. Steele's evidence in chief, at least on the Monday, feeling which that would be done on the Tuesday morning. But if we could do that on the Monday afternoon, that would mean that he would go straight into cross, obviously, on Tuesday morning, and maybe finish in half a day, allowing some time later in the afternoon for other evidence. Then, so far as planning, policy and the conditions hearings are concerned, maybe ambitious to do it in half a day, but it might just tip into the afternoon if we were to do that on the Wednesday, but Council's confident that it should be possible to complete that in one day, for sure, meaning that the Thursday would be available as the overrun day if it was required.
And any thoughts on the site inspection? I hear what's contribution. I'm not aware of the school holiday arrangements in Aberdeenshire, but I know that certainly where I am, it's actually before that. It's the middle of the month. So,
Sir, I'm not aware of the holiday position myself. I have to say in Aberdeenshire, sir, but I know that our planning officer who would wish to attend the site inspection will be unavailable on the 29th of October.
okay.
Oh, sorry, sir. I just received a message that in Aberdeenshire, the holiday period is the week commencing the 18th of October for 2 weeks.
Okay. I'll bear that in mind. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Innes, is there anything you want to come back on from what Mr. Brown has said at all?
No, apart from the fact that I think if that's down to one witness, then there's a real prospect that we may usefully hear evidence from third parties on Tuesday afternoon. But I still think if anybody felt that they wanted an appointed time when they could guarantee to give evidence, then it's still potentially possible to reserve some time on Wednesday morning and still keep the planning and condition sessions completable by that on the Wednesday.
Right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll just open this up to the other interested parties then. The idea that we reserve a slot in the inquiry programme for you to present evidence, is that something that you would find beneficial? Perhaps that could start with Mr. Clapham.
Yes, I think I would find it beneficial. I mean, I think my vague intention is to try and attend the whole inquiry, but or at least the landscape and visual impact session. But indeed, it would be very nice if we could have a firm time when we can present evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. And anybody else like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think set times would be beneficial, but just a process check. Having not been in a planning inquiry like this before, as you go through, if you're sat there through the session and there's things that are said, can you raise questions there and then, or is it not that takes that format, if that makes sense?
You can't interject when the question pops into your head, but you will have an opportunity to cross-examine the witness, the applicant's witness, at the conclusion of their evidence.
I see.
And yeah, so it's not a discussion as such. The applicant will present, their witness will present the evidence, and then the other parties to the inquiry will have an opportunity to ask questions of that witness. And then Mr. Innes will then kind of wrap up and perhaps go back to re-examine his witness. So there is an opportunity to ask questions, but it's not a discussion where you can just raise your hand and ask a question
as it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand that. So I guess it is beneficial to have fixed times, but B, if there's something we want to raise, then we almost have to attend the whole session. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Well, like I say,
okay.
The proceedings will be recorded and uploaded that evening. So there will be a chance to review what was said by a particular witness, perhaps prior to you taking the stand and presenting the evidence of your own evidence.
Yeah, but if that individual's then left or was only there for a day, that then has to go back into the process to be reviewed and commented on, doesn't it? I'm just trying to get a process check, that was all.
Any other contributions, Mr. Burgoyne? I can see your name lit up there. Is there anything you wanted to say?
No, that was me.
Oh, was you? I beg your pardon.
Yeah, it's Mr. Kilford. I came in at the same time.
I beg your pardon.
Having a designated time does help when obviously focuses the time that we need to be available. And also just to note that I'm not available for a site visit the first 2 weeks of October, unfortunately. I have a prior commitment.
Any other comments on the timings of the inquiry itself? Okay, thank you. Is there any other matter that anybody wishes to raise before I close the meeting?
Yes, I've just got one further matter. I don't think we have all the email addresses of all the participants. So in trying to organise the site inspection, either as part of the note of this examination, we give out our people administrating the matter to your office, and our email is distributed. And if you're wanting to pass comment on the site inspection, if you could write to us and CC the DPA in, or otherwise it ends up other parties trying to organise. We're trying to pull this together to make it work for everybody. So we do need everyone to feed in as to what you need. What we will do is then produce an itinerary arising from the suggestions, and we will put it forward for comment by parties. And at that point, ultimately, it will be for the reporter to determine ultimately what the site inspection involves. But we will try and put it together in a structured and organised fashion so that people can feed in. And we will probably have 2 goes. We'll produce a draft itinerary and then get comments, and then produce one that we think. And if you've got further comments, you can feed them into the DPA process. But just to set out that we don't have all the email addresses at this point. So we'll give your office the correct name for the parties to put their suggestions in, and equally we'll from that we'll circulate all those matters if that's acceptable. Or if a party doesn't want their email address circulated, they'll have to do it through the DPA, which is a little more cumbersome. But equally, normally we do hold that sort of data, and we don't use it other than for the purposes of the inquiry. And it won't be used for any other purpose. It's just a means of communication. So, as I say, if anyone does feel uncomfortable, they can do it through the DPA, but we'll give you our email address so that you can make suggestions, and we will send to you, if you're happy, the draft itinerary for you to comment on, and then we can get back with an itinerary for the DPA. And again, if any parties have further comments, they can put them to the DPA at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Innes. That's very helpful. I did actually make a note to ask Mr. Burgoyne and Ms. Struan whether they were happy for their personal email addresses to be circulated to others that are interested. I think everybody else has given their permission at the end of the first meeting. But perhaps, I don't know, Ms. Struan, Mr. Burgoyne, are you content for your personal email addresses to be used?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin here. Yes, no problem. Thanks.
Super. Thank you very much. Okay, unless there's anything else that is pressing, anybody, I'll formally close the meeting there. Thank you very much. Thank you.